On today's show, who does Bob McKenzie have ranked in the top 15? We'll look at that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalakash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, joined by Sebastian High, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down Bob McKenzie's top 15. We'll look at his rankings, evaluate players, compare them to where we have him ranked, and give you the breakdown on these players and where they're likely to end up on the NHL Draft board. Before we get into that, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day and leave us a rating and review. It helps the channel out a lot. So let's just jump right into it with first overall. I think we can spend like 5 seconds on this. It's Macklin Celebrini. There's no doubt. There's no surprise. Celebrini's the top-ranked prospect on Bob McKenzie's list, and what a fantastic season he had this year. 64 points in 38 games. An average-sized center, but just plays with so much pace and energy, right?
He really does, and he's so projectable in how he plays in all 3 zones. He's a fantastic skater. He's super quick. He's elite in terms of creating offense off the rush. He drops really low in the defensive zone to help out his defenders, and he finds a way to make an impact in every conceivable way, and he's been progressing on that front in a really, really steady and upwards way for the past year and a half, 2 years. So he's going to be a shoo-in to be a top 6 center as soon as he hits the NHL. So look for him to be a very good player right out of the gate for the San Jose Sharks there at first overall. But there's no surprise here whatsoever, and he's also first overall on both of our personal boards. And basically, I don't think I've talked to a single scout in the last 6 months that has not had him at first overall either. So easy pick.
There's no doubt. He's on every board at first overall. No surprise there. San Jose is getting a fantastic player here. At second overall, Bob McKenzie has Ivan Demidov, and this has become a bit more clear of a second overall pick. It is pretty open after 2, and we'll get into that tomorrow as we break down our mock draft, so stay tuned for that. But at second overall, Bob McKenzie's not the only one to have Demidov. We do as well. A lot of people do as well. The skill level is insane. Like the things he's been doing at the MHL level, like he should not be playing at that level. And we talked about it a couple episodes ago. There's a reason he's down there. It's not because of skill reasons. It's not because of habits reasons. It's not because of lack of translatability or projectability. It's internal politics. Demidov is fantastic. He's got the best stick handling in the draft by far. Like there's no one that comes close to his ability to dangle players and the creativity and inventiveness and originality. Like he does things that no one else can do with his hands there in the draft. So, in terms of the skating ability, it's a bit wonky. He does a lot of 10 and 2s. It's unconventional, but the output is insane. Like this is a player who's able to accelerate really well out of those 10 and 2s. So it's not necessarily a detriment. A lot of players who use that 10 and 2 style too frequently can be a bit linear, a bit easy to shut down and break down. But the fact that Demidov is able to accelerate so quickly out of that 10 and 2 move gives me a lot of promise. I think that he's going to have no problem creating offense at the NHL level, and whoever picks him is going to be really happy. But he could slip for reasons that don't have to do with pure skill. But I agree with Bob here. That's the second overall pick if I've ever seen one. I think this is more where it opens up for me at third overall. And Bob McKenzie has Anton Silayev as the third overall pick. Now, this is a bit contentious. I think we can spend a bit of time on this. First of all, give me the breakdown of Anton Silayev because he's been talked about a lot. He's a very unique prospect. Give me the profile on him, size, handedness, but also what type of game he plays and what makes us a bit more hesitant than the consensus on Silayev.
Yeah, so Silayev is a 6'7" left shot defenseman who has the biggest reach and range in this draft class by a country mile, basically. And he's a really solid skater. So that combination of size, range, and mobility, and while also playing professional hockey in the KHL all season long, is a combination that NHL teams are going to like a ton.
Yeah.
In terms of us as scouts, we have some more question marks around his offensive projectability and how raw he still is. He's very much a project pick. He is anything but refined. The ceiling is intriguing, but still a bit murky in terms of how it actually plays out in the NHL in terms of role and production. My guess is he ends up being a shutdown defenseman on a second pairing, but clearly NHL teams see that top pairing upside with him. I've struggled a lot in my viewings with his ability on the puck, whether it be in sparking the breakout, and even like just being able to handle around a single forechecker to solve a problem with his hands, and even using his feet to solve problems is something he hasn't really done too much on the puck so far. But if he's able to add a couple of those on puck and offensive habits and abilities into his game, then maybe you start looking into that like number 2 defenseman upside. But I think there's still a long road for that to develop. But he's a fascinating prospect, and one that has been very interesting to try to pin down because he is just so raw, and his entire projection is very theoretical. But there are some
Yeah.
fantastic raw tools here.
Yeah, for sure. Like a player this big skates this well is unfair. Like he closes caps like no one else I've seen, and I'm including guys. I mean, I've been scouting for a while. I've seen Anton Silayev. I've seen like Rasmus Dahlin and his mobility. The combination of size and mobility with Anton Silayev is on a different level, and he could be one of the best gap closing defensemen in the world. And I think that's regardless of where his offense progresses. You know, his defensive game's already so polished. His ability to his defensive tools rather are already so polished. The decision making is another thing. He gets really, like you said, he doesn't handle pressure that well, but also he tends to take himself out of plays, which he can recover from at the MHL or KHL level. But once he gets to the NHL, it's as good as his mobility and reach is. If he pinches at the wrong moment, NHL players know how to handle big mobile players. Like that's the thing they deal with all the time. So that's going to be another step of development that I'm curious to see how that progresses. But moving on to 4th overall on Bob McKenzie's rankings, we have the big right-handed defenseman and Artyom Levshunov, another freak athlete. Here at 4th overall, 6'2", 209 pounds. He's scored 35 points in 38 games in his rookie year with Michigan State. He was a really late commitment as well. Kind of committed to the NCAA at the last minute. Could have spent the year in the USHL, but chose to progress with Michigan State and see where that goes. And it's gone fairly well for him. He was a key piece in turning Michigan State into a top 5 team in the nation in the NCAA. Another big athletic player who puts in a lot of work. I think a lot of teams are going to love the work ethic, the dedication to the sport, the dedication to improving himself. It's been clear all year from everything that we've heard from him. But on top of that, really, really mobile, one of the best skating bases in the draft. Uses that mobility really well to close gaps. He's another player kind of like Silayev, where the decision making isn't all there all the time. But I feel like he's gotten a lot calmer as the years gone on, and that added composure has made him so much more effective in the NCAA. He's got a booming shot from the point, whether it's a wrister or a snapper or a slap shot, one timer, that kind of stuff. He can just rifle that puck. And on top of that, he's gotten more comfortable hanging on to pucks, deking, cutting to the inside, drawing a player in, passing laterally, kind of opening up ice for his teammates. And that's added an extra layer of effectiveness to his game that wasn't there at the start of the year, and especially wasn't there last year. And we're talking about a player who 2 years ago was playing in the U18 Belarusian League, which is not the best level of hockey. It's not a level of hockey that helps you develop translatable tools. So that progression in his game is really promising, and it's a great testament to how much work he's been putting in on and off the ice in order to improve himself and get to that level. I think that Levshunov is absolutely going to go in the top 4. That's for sure. I think there's a very solid chance he goes at 2, but we'll get into that tomorrow with our mock draft. Stay tuned for that. At 5th overall, let's close things off here in our first segment with Caden Lindstrom, the number 5 pick on Bob McKenzie's list, a massive center at 6'3", 210 pounds, 46 points in 32 games this season. There's injury concerns, but the upside's really promising with Lindstrom, right?
It really is. And of those 46 points in 32 games, 27 of those were goals. He's a real dual threat in the offensive zone. He's shown some really bright flashes in terms of playmaking creativity, inventiveness. Of course, it is an absolutely stacked Medicine Hat Tigers lineup, so take that with a pinch of salt in terms of the production. But yeah, as you said, the injury concern is perhaps there, but this is a very intelligent player. And while he is still very raw in his habits and how he's able to leverage his tools on a consistent basis, that foundation of intelligence in terms of reading defenses, finding solutions to problems in complex, projectable ways, I like a lot. And as you said, he's really big. He gets to the inside. He's middle driven. I think defensively, there's definitely some room to grow there, but there's also been some really nice flashes of that defensive motor getting engaged. He's not a slam dunk centerman. I think there's also definitely a chance with Lindstrom that he ends up being a winger at the NHL level, but he is just still so raw, and he hasn't gotten that many puck touches or games this season with just those 32 plus a couple playoff appearances at the end of the season. But with a full season, hopefully healthy for Caden Lindstrom, I'm hoping to see a ton of progression in his habits and maturity as a D+1, and he'd be a fantastic pick anywhere between like 3rd and 8th overall, wherever he ends up falling here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just want to add before we go to break, this is a player who in his 32 games has probably had more puck touches than some prospects in the WHL have had all season. Like, he gets the puck a lot, and that's really good for his progression. But that's our first segment done. We'll go through picks 6 through 10, which includes 3 defensemen. We'll get into that in just a second. Just before, a quick word from our sponsors at Policygenius. Life insurance is such an important safety net for you and your family. And the issue with that is that there are so many different policies out there, so many different companies out there, that finding your own best price and best policy can be really overwhelming and time consuming. This is where Policygenius kicks in. I mean, they help you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to talk you through it. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will talk you through the whole process step by step and find you the best price by easily comparing quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Your work life insurance policy may not even offer enough protection for your family's needs, and worse than that, if you leave your job for any reason, it might not follow you. So Policygenius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. So check life insurance off of your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Just head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment, we'll be talking about picks 6 through 10, and we can start things off here with 3 defensemen in a row. We'll start off at 6 overall with Sam Dickinson, the 6'3", 200-pound left shot defenseman out of the London Knights in the OHL. He's kind of being touted as a defensive defenseman, but if you look at the point totals, I mean, he put up 70 points in 68 games for London, playing on their second power play. And playing top 4 minutes pretty consistently throughout the season. This is a player who is aggressive and very aggressive both offensively and defensively. He closes gaps early in off the rush in defensive zone. He's in your face. He's stapling you into the boards. He's getting pucks off of you. Not just using his physicality, but he uses his stick really well to pry pucks off of players. And in the offensive zone, or especially off the rush, this is a player who uses his elite skating extremely, extremely well. Heading up the offensive zone, he's very comfortable carrying pucks in himself. He's also comfortable, dishing pucks early, moving off the puck, joining rushes as a fourth forward. The way he uses his skating matters to me a lot more than how good it is in isolation, and it's very good in isolation, so that gives you a good idea. At 7th overall, we have Zayne Parekh, a player we both like a lot. 96 points, including 33 goals in 66 games for the Saginaw Spirit in the OHL. We're talking about an average-sized right-handed defenseman. Talk me through the profile of Parekh and why we both love him so much.
He is dynamic. I mean, to score half a goal a game as a defenseman in the CHL is pretty absurd. And Parekh is this highly intelligent and highly creative point creator, a creator from the point. And the defensive game could certainly still use some work, but it's been touted by some scouts as being like a massive red flag, which we don't quite see. There's definitely been some flashes of intriguing defensive tools and defensive habits and defensive instincts with Zayne Parekh. But if you're drafting him in the top 10, you're doing so for the on-puck and offensive impact. In transition, he's a fantastic breakout artist, whether it be as a puck handler and rushing up the puck on his own for his own exit or entry, or whether it be as a breakout passer. His handling, his passing ability, and his goal scoring, all the puck skills are way above average. They are extremely strong tools. He's really toolsy. still quite raw in some ways too. So there's definitely some growing room with Parekh. So when you look at the point total, look at the growing room, there's a lot to be excited for in this prospect. And while I would be, I think, a little bit surprised to see him go inside that top 7 range,
Yeah.
with the tendency of teams to veer closer towards the more safe, big, projectable players. And Parekh is not the most projectable player in this top 10 range.
Yeah.
He is still fantastic value wherever he falls, whether it be at 7 or at 10 or at 13.
Yeah.
He's really fun.
For sure. I think the awareness is there defensively. I think there's some apathy though. He's not as engaged. He doesn't have the highest motor. He's not the most physical guy. So when he doesn't care as much, it's a lot more salient and evident. But I think, this is something you can work on. Moving on to 8th overall, we have Zeev Buium, the left-handed defenseman out of Denver in the NCAA. A fantastic defenseman, a player that I honestly would have higher than this. 50 points in 42 games at the NCAA level as a freshman is ridiculous. This is a player who did not start off in the top 4 for Denver and worked his way up, forced his way up to the top pair with his brother Shai Buium. Played a decent chunk of the year with him and Sean Behrens as well. And for me, Zeev Buium he's composure personified. He just keeps a level head at all times. He's constantly aware of what's going on around him, doesn't panic, doesn't stress under pressure, handles pressure really well, whether it's with his back to the player or facing it, skating up against a player. You never feel like he's out of it. You never feel like he's going to panic and make the wrong play. And for me, he was one of the, if not the best player for Denver in the national championship. So he won the NCAA national championship with Denver and was one of their best players. He forced his way onto the World Juniors roster for Team USA, who had options. They did not need to go for a draft eligible. There's just so much to love with Zeev Buium, and the defensive game is really solid for an undersized left-handed defenseman. And on top of that, he's got the creativity, the inventiveness, and the skill to create offensively. I think this is one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman in the class. So to have him at 8, I think is pretty surprising, given everything he's done this year with Denver. I just know that size plays a part in this. Moving on to 9th overall, Constantinius finally makes an appearance at 9th overall. A 5'11" right shot center. He played in the Finnish Liga all year. Scored 36 points in 51 games, one of the highest point totals we've seen out of the Liga in recent years. Just a really projectable, responsible, intelligent center, right?
He is all of those things. He is one of the smartest players in this draft class. Definitely in contention for that second smartest player in the class behind Celebrini spot. And as you said, he's so responsible defensively. He's effective in all 3 zones, and he did that against professional competition. He's not the most dynamic offensive force in the world, but he's a solid playmaker. He doesn't use his handling to really solve problems in a very complex manner, and he's not going to be a real sniper at the NHL level, but he gets to the middle of the ice, he gets to the high danger areas, and he's a threat to score from that short to medium range. So he's not going to score from far away. He's not going to be your Cole Eiserman type of sniper by any stretch of the imagination, but he can play center or wing, and he's just so intelligent. He's so adaptable. He can play a pretty solid role on just about any line that you plug him in on. And I think that type of versatility and projectability, and also the fact that he's going to be a pretty effective NHLer within a year's time, it all very much figures into him being a high value selection in that 8 to 12 range.
For sure. And let's close things off in our second segment here with pick number 10 on Bob McKenzie's list, and it's going to be Tij Iginla, the average-sized winger out of the Kelowna Rockets in the WHL. By the way, it's already confirmed Iginla's going to be playing center next year. So we're going to see some center action for Iginla next year with Kelowna. He scored 47 goals in 64 games for Kelowna, was a key component in them making the playoffs, dragged them to the second round himself, pretty much single-handedly. Just a fantastic, intelligent, goal-scoring winger who can also make plays at a really high level. He's a great distributor, draws in players. He does a lot of great things, but the big standout for me with Iginla is there's no better board battler than him in this draft. The way he gets off the boards, the way that he attracts defensemen to him so that he can reverse into them, open up some space, draw players out of position, all that good stuff. His board game is the most refined in this draft, and it's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up on draft day. He could go as high as 4, as low as 12. Anywhere in that range, I think, is realistic for Tij Iginla. But that's our second segment done. We'll get through picks 11 through 15, including some doozies in there. We'll get into that in just a second. But before we get into that, a quick word from our sponsors at eBay Motors.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits, LED headlights, and far more. Whether you're to speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, which is available to US customers only, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Alrighty, so moving on to our final segment, we'll be looking at picks 11 through 15 on Bob McKenzie's top 15 list. And we'll start off with 11th overall here with Berkeley Catton, who sees a bit of a slip compared to consensus. Scored 116 points in 68 games for the Spokane Chiefs in the WHL, a 5'11 left shot center, one of the most dynamic rush creators in the entire draft. The way that he picks apart defenses in transition is just absolutely ridiculous. But he's undersized, and a big part in why he's produced so much is the fact that he's been playing like 30 minutes a night consistently with Spokane, which is great. I mean, it's good that a player is trusted that much, but it's a testament to Spokane not having much support for him, and also him being overused in a lot of scenarios. I mean, we're talking about a prospect who, again, carries pucks across lines really well. It's such an effective, dynamic power play distributor and shooter. He's got that dual threat with his amazing goal scoring and his great playmaking. He's also a great stick handler. Like, the skill is there. This is not necessarily a top end defensive player. He's not the biggest at 5'11", 163. So for me, I understand why he's at 11. It's just the skill level warrants higher, for sure. Like, if this was a pure skill ranking, he'd be top 5 for sure. But there are limitations to his game. There are inconsistencies in his game, especially defensively, especially physically. He gets pushed around pretty easily. But if he figures out how to get off the boards more consistently, to not force transitions as often, to be able to dump a puck, retrieve it, play the cycle, that kind of stuff, we might be talking about one of the highest producing prospects out of this draft. His production's out of this world. But moving on to 12th overall on Bob McKenzie's list, we have Carter Yakimchuk, a 6'3", 200-pound right-handed defenseman. Talk me through his game, and again, why we have a bit more hesitation than consensus on Yakimchuk.
Yeah, so he is the second 30-goal defenseman of the CHL that we're covering here, which is rare for a draft class. And through 66 games, he scored 30 goals and 71 points. This is a high-end offensive defenseman with really impressive tools. He's a pretty solid skater. He moves around the ice really well, especially for a 6'3" defenseman. Really powerful stride. And on top of that, mobility and power in his skating, he has some of the best hands that we've seen in the defensive prospect in this draft class. He can handle the puck up ice really well. He's a pretty solid passer, but he's has a cannon of a shot from the point. Offensive tools are really the standout skills here. Like, all the puck skills are well above average in this prospect. The decision making has been very much an area of questions over the course of this season, especially defensively. The defensive impact has left a lot to be desired, especially for like such a big defenseman, where that often is an expectation in the CHL. And I know that the Calgary Hitmen have had their fair share of woes on that front with Carter Yakimchuk's defensive impact this season. But at the same time, he's progressed a ton this season. His early season tape was extremely frustrating, and he was quite ineffective even on the puck, despite putting up a ton of points. So there's been a solid level of progression over the course of the season, which is certainly promising. But yeah, you'd be picking this player because you're taking a swing on the tools, on the upside, on the offensive production at the NHL level, and hoping that there's some added violence and defensive responsibility to go along with that big frame.
For sure. I think he's a freak athlete. And in terms of the violence, I mean, we're talking about a player who had 120 penalty minutes this season. And I think he had like 2 fights. Like, this is a player who needs to actually reel in the violence, to reel in the aggression a bit. This is a player who, I don't think has figured out the responsibility side of defense yet. I think he's very aggressive, which is great. It works at the WHL level, and sometimes it gets you in the penalty box, but it still works a decent amount of time. But yeah, the athleticism and the offensive skill is off the charts for Yakimchuk, and we'll see where he ends up. At 13th overall, Bob McKenzie has Cole Eiserman, so kind of in the same range that we have him. And probably for the same reason. I mean, this is a prospect who scored 57 goals in 56 games and across all competitions this season. We know what he gives. He's an amazing goal scoring winger. 6 foot, 200 pounds, kind of built like a tree stump, difficult to push off pucks. But really, what really stands out with him is just that one-timer from the half wall. It's been his weapon all year. He shoots every opportunity he gets, and the concerns have been there all year as well. Defensive responsibilities, which is a no-go with Eiserman. He's not a player who really distributes the puck. He doesn't really look for his teammates when he gets the puck, mainly just looking at the net and trying to figure out how to get the puck into it. I saw a bit more of that projectability, that playmaking ability at the U18 Worlds for Team USA in this competition. Even though he only had 1 assist, I felt he was a better distributor than he was all year for the NTDP in the USHL. So a lot to love with Eiserman overall, but I think that there are too many question marks, too many clear weaknesses that probably don't become strengths or don't even reach average at the NHL level for him to be considered any higher. But if you can get the right team to get their hands on him, a team that is willing to surround him with good skill, to surround him with players who can compensate for his shortcomings, then you've got like a 40, 50 goal scorer in the NHL. And that's usually top 5 value. So to get that at 13, fully understandable. But again, there's a reason why he's there. At 14th overall, there's Backett Sennecke, a right winger out of the Oshawa Generals in the OHL, 6'2", 180 pounds. The Generals are playing in the OHL finals right now against the London Knights, and Senneca's being a key part of that team. A key reason why they're in that race. Incredibly fun. He's so fun. That's the word for him. Skillful, energetic. The stick handling abilities off the charts. He's also defensively responsible. Really good on the forecheck. Really good on retrievals. And he's grown like 5 or 6 inches in the last year, but it shows in his game. He's still uncoordinated, still figuring out how to unlock more agility, how to work with his bigger frame. But there's a reason why he's in this top 15. He's got a lot of upside, and I think that he's going to be a really interesting team, in a very interesting pick for any team that picks him in the kind of 10 to 15 range. There's been rumblings of him going top 5. We just did a prospect profile on him where we discussed that. I'm not as sold. But yeah, I see the upside, I see the vision, I see the value with Sennecke in the top 15. Let's close things off here now with with Bob McKenzie's 15th pick in his top 15, and it's Trevor Connelly, a very contentious but very, very, very skilled prospect. Talk me through the frame, the point totals, and the profile of Trevor Connelly just to close things off here.
Yeah, Trevor Connelly is tremendously dynamic. The 6'1", 161-pound left winger put up 31 goals and 78 points through 52 USHL games with the Tri-City Storm this season. There have been their fair share of both on ice and off ice big question marks around him and his decision making. And that was included at the U18 World Championships, where he took the 5-minute major that basically gave Canada the world medal, the gold medal in that tournament, while the US were trying to protect a 1-goal lead. But that said, Trevor Connelly, the puck handling skill is easily top 3 in this draft class. The playmaking ability has grown leaps and bounds this season. He's a pure scorer before this year, and at this stage, he is a primary assist generating machine. There's definitely still a lot of room to grow in terms of that link up and build up play as a passer, but put on the final touches on those offensive sequences is a big area of strength, and the goal scoring is another big strength with him. He can score from medium to long range. He has a wicked wrist shot, a very quick release. His selection of shooting in terms of the timing and in terms of what shot to take, in terms of waiting for a defender or a teammate to get in front of the goalie, to get in that lane, to screen the goaltender is excellent. He has a really intuitive understanding of creating offense and generating offense and building that offense through the rush. He's a true rush creator. He's a really good skater, very dynamic. And when the puck is on his stick, anything can happen. He's a player that can easily get fans out of their seats. Very exciting. But the off-puck game, could still use some work, especially the defensive impact. But even there's been a decent amount of development over the course of the season. He was very disengaged early on, and at this stage, there are more games where he's engaged defensively than disengaged.
For sure. I think just to wrap things up on Connelly, I think there's not a more Trevor Connelly thing than scoring in Michigan against Latvia and then costing them the gold medal against Team Canada. It's pretty on brand. But that wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day and leave us a rating and review. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our next or future episodes, especially tomorrow as we break down our a near full mock draft in the first round for the 2024 NHL Draft. This has been Hadi Kalikesh, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian High, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects, and we hope you tune in next time.